This is All India Radio. In the program Spotlight, now we bring a discussion on India-Russia strategic and defense partnership. The participants are Anil Wadhwa, former diplomat, and Simran Sodhi, journalist.
Today we are discussing the India-Russia strategic and defense relationship and the visit of the Defense Minister Rajnath Singh to Russia. The minister reached Russia today morning and he will tomorrow participate in the 75th Victory Day Parade and also meet top military leaders in Russia, and the India-Russia relationship will get a boost further. Ambassador Wadhwa, when you see the India-Russia relationship in terms of defense, in terms of the strategic partnership, how significant is this visit of the defense minister to Russia and how much will this add to the existing relationship?
Well, as we know, Russia has been a long-standing and time-tested partner for India, and development of India-Russia relations has been a key pillar of our foreign policy. Now, of course, we have what we call a special and privileged strategic partnership, and this is a multifaceted relationship. Of course, it is heavily dependent on the relationship which is built around defense ties. For a number of years now, both countries have been trying to diversify this relationship into the economic sphere. A lot has happened over the previous few years, especially in the last few summit meetings, and the last visit of our Prime Minister to Vladivostok was a very important occasion to try and diversify into other sectors which we can talk about separately. But currently, at this point in time, the visit of our Defense Minister Rajnath Singh is assumes a special significance. I say this because at the moment we are facing Chinese aggression all along the line of actual control on our border with China. And at the same time, given the fact that there is a excellent relationship which Russia enjoys with China due to geopolitics and the time-tested relationship that Russia has with India, this would be an occasion where the Defense Minister of China, Wei Fanghe, will also be present at this parade. But for that, Defense Minister Rajnath Singh will have a chance to also meet up with the Russian Deputy Prime Minister Yuri Borisov and the Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu. And this would provide a chance to talk about very important issues. Two of the most important issues that are on the table right now is the delivery of additional orders for more MiG and Sukhoi fighter jets, because there's a gap in the Indian Air Force at the moment, and also the fact that India would like to expedite the delivery of the S-400 system, anti-aircraft system, which is very important in the current context, plus also to make sure that spare parts for all the defense systems which have been bought from Russia in the past, the spare parts are available on an expedited basis, possibly through airlifting rather than sending them by sea. So in sum, this is a special visit coming as it does at this special point in our relationship with China.
Ambassador Wadhwa, if we talk a little about the China factor here, and we've seen the visit, as you've pointed out, happens just a few days after we have seen the Chinese aggression on the border, and we have seen China behaving in a manner which is very aggressive towards India, towards its other neighbors also. Do you feel that the fact that both Russia and India are also members in various forums like BRICS, SCO, the Russia-India-China Forum, these forums see both Russia and India members, and there is a scope for even greater partnership? Do you feel that Russia can take advantage of this and maybe put some pressure on China, or maybe step in somewhere to diffuse the situation, or maybe this is Russia's way of dealing with the geopolitics of the region?
Well, let me answer this question by saying that Russia's influence with both China and India has grown considerably, because earlier it was only with India. But at the moment, I could say that it is also a similar situation with China due to geopolitics. And you're right in the sense that there are a number of organizations like the SCO, for instance, the RIC, the BRICS, where both Russia and China play a substantial role. They see the world order through a different prism. India, of course, has a slightly different worldview at the moment. But if you look at the influence that Russia today wields over both China and India, it is only natural that it would not like to disturb the grouping of RIC. It sees itself as a major role player and as a country which can shape the events in future. So looking at it from that perspective, we know that although the China-Russia relationship is very complex, there are many issues that still divide them and issues that have to be managed. Also other partnerships and relationships which have to be balanced, not to mention the old suspicions about each other's true intentions. But today, ideology finds them in the same bed. It is Washington's trade war against Beijing and the same Washington sanctioning Russia for its annexation of Crimea, which has actually brought them together. Now, if we look back, we can see that there have been no less than 30 meetings between Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping since 2013. And the earlier conception of the relationship being an axis of convenience has not been borne out because this relationship is now deepened at the political, economic and military levels. Also, bilateral trade between Russia and China has grown to 108 billion last year. Of course, still not very great compared to China's trade with the United States or South Korea. But Russia has lifted controls on Chinese investments in the strategic oil and gas sector. Their defense ties have surged ahead, and Russia has also sold top-of-the-line Su-30 fighters and the S-400 missile defense system already to China. Now, in this situation, therefore, we also have a coming together of Russia and China as far as the formulation of the Indo-Pacific is concerned. There is also a nuanced position that Russia now takes vis-a-vis Pakistan because it sees Pakistan as a key player in the peace in Afghanistan and on the Afghan Taliban. Of course, this is disquieting for India, but the Moscow-Beijing relationship, as I told you earlier, is also not very smooth sailing, so that's a saving grace. Sum total is that I think Russia is the only country in the world today which enjoys that special trust and I would say a certain amount of influence with both countries. Given the situation on the border that we have with China today, Russia could play a very important role in this context.
Mr. Wadhwa, when we talk of India's relationship with Russia, somewhere we are also these days talking of India's growing partnership with the United States. We've also seen historically, if we look at both the ties, India has had a longer, closer relationship with Russia, but of late we have seen a great improvement, a great coming together of the India-US relationship, again in matters of defense, for instance. India and US are cooperating now much more closely than ever before. Do you feel that India also has to do this balancing act all the time, that India must balance out its relationships with the United States when it comes to Russia and vice versa?
You're right in the sense that India has been playing that game for some time now because we have a relationship with Russia which is based on defense and defense investments. Outright purchases, investments and spare parts are very important in this relationship. At the same time, we've seen that the number of agreements in the defense side with US has grown over the past years. In fact, some of the agreements are leading up to a complete interoperability, and this is very important for India as far as the Indian Ocean is concerned, in order to make sure that there is a balancing out of China in the region, in the seas around us. I don't think Russia is in that position to play that game. Also, given its own relationship with China, Russia is certainly not going to support any other country in that regard. So there is this importance that India feels that the U.S. relationship has. It's a technology partner, a high technology partner. It's a partner for various inputs into the development process in India as India modernizes, urbanizes, and at the same time requires high technology, which Russia cannot provide because Russia is primarily a defense partner, a relationship that we are trying to diversify now into the economic side, but we haven't quite got there as yet. So in that respect, India has to balance its relationship with Russia on the one hand and United States on the other. But as far as defense purchases are concerned, India has made it quite clear that it would go by its own self-interest and priorities. And we can see this as a case in point in the case of the Countering America's Adversaries Through Sanctions Act, which was CAATSA, which authorized the U.S. government to impose sanctions on entities for significant defense transactions with Russia. So the S-400 deal is a state-of-the-art deal. It's a little over $5 billion. Naturally, that would qualify as significant. But India has clearly told the United States that due to the geopolitical situation that it faces and the combined threats from Pakistan and China, it is definitely in its interest to purchase this system. And so India would continue to do that and would not like to have any constraints on its freedom of action in that regard.
Briefly, to wrap up the discussion, Ambassador Wadhwa, would you say are the focus areas that India and Russia can work together to take this relationship even further? We see a very robust defense relationship. Do you feel that focusing slightly more on the economic aspect of the relationship would add even greater strength to this relationship?
Yes, of course. As I mentioned in the beginning, I think there are a number of areas of collaboration. Quite specifically, recently, as far as the Russian Far East is concerned, it opens up new possibilities for collaboration in metals and minerals, natural resources and forest produce. That includes timber and production, processing and skilled labor. And the last one, skilled labor, is very important because that has a new element which has been introduced into this relationship, and there's a background to it because there is a Chinese influx into the Russian Far East, and Russia would like India to also be present so that it doesn't get overwhelmed by the presence of the Chinese in that area. Also, there are a number of investment projects in the spheres of mining, metallurgy, power, oil and gas, and railways, pharmaceuticals, information technology, in chemicals and infrastructure, in automobiles, space, shipbuilding and manufacturing. And all this reflects a focus on the desire for diversification. So, of course, if you look at the overall situation, Indo-Russian trade and investment ties outside the defense realm have been below potential, and now focus should be on areas other than defense, on hydrocarbons and nuclear power. So in the long term, Russia would be a beneficiary as well, and India should focus on pharmaceuticals, on healthcare and IT, because this is where both countries have their respective strengths. We should also look at expediting pipelines for direct gas delivery from Russia to India, and also early operationalization of a proposed 1 billion through India's National Investment and Infrastructure Fund and the Russian Direct Investment Fund, because that is an agreement that has been reached already, and that will benefit both infrastructure and technology products on both sides. There is also a need to make sure that we step into the niche which has been created, because Russia cannot export fruits, vegetables and products to the United States, to the EU, etc. due to sanctions. And here India can step in. Also, Russia is dependent more and more now on buffalo meat, for instance, from India. It has opportunities to invest, which is not done in the past, in the various industrial corridors that we have, like Delhi-Mumbai Industrial Corridor, the Bangalore-Mumbai Economic Corridor, and the Chennai-Bangalore Industrial Corridor. So that is one area of cooperation. In the international realm, there are two major projects that I think both countries should look at. One is to make sure that the international North-South corridor via Iran, which is not a new idea, gets activated and works properly. And the second one is about the Arctic, where Russia has invited India to participate, and India should actively look at participation over there, because that could be a win-win situation for both countries. And at the moment, the attractive areas where India could invest in Russia are chemicals, telecommunications, and trading and consultancy services. So all this overall will give a diversified look to the economic relationship between the two countries. Our trade is just about $10.6 billion, and investments are also about $30 billion. And I think by 2025, both sides have set a target to make sure that there is an investment of $50 billion which can be reached, and trade should be doubled by 2025. It's doable because there are areas which have been identified, but what is required is for the businesses and the governments of both sides to give it a push.
And in the coming days, we will continue our discussions on the India-Russia bilateral relationship, and we will also follow Defense Minister Rajnath Singh's visit to Moscow. With this, we bring today's discussion to an end. Thank you.
Thank you.
You were listening to a discussion on India-Russia strategic and defense partnership. The participants were Anil Wadhwa, former diplomat, and Simran Sodhi, journalist. This program was produced and presented by the News Services Division of All India Radio. You can listen to it on a mobile app, News on AIR. This program is also available on the website newsonair.com. You may email your opinion about this program at airnsttalks@gmail.com.